Phones to listen to the interpretation. Thank you very much. Yes, headphones. And now I'd like to say a few organizational matters. Once the air raid alert will be on, we should proceed to the shelter and we will interrupt the event. I hope it will not happen, but I have to discuss it with you either way. Thank you very much. I hope that presentees online hear us. We are going to start just in few minutes.
Okay, now it's all quiet here, so it's also high time to start. Good morning, everyone. My name is Yulia Mincheva. I'm advisor to Mykolaiv City Mayor, and I'm welcoming you today, and I'm very glad to welcome you on behalf of both in City Council and the EUACI. And today is the day when we present the integrity assessment report. It was very high anticipated by a lot of not only internal stakeholders of Vodokanal, but also external stakeholders. And I will be very brief. We'll have a few welcome speeches, and then we'll go sharply to the presentation of the report. You will have the full report, both in Ukrainian and in English. Today, actually, you will have it through a QR code on your pages. So the presentation will be brief. If you have questions after reading the report, you will have contacts who can provide you more information, elaborate on some issues. But the main idea is also to discuss how we will transform enterprises of critical infrastructure in these challenging times. So we will have a public discussion, and I will tell you later who we managed to get to the panel, because it's very unique. It will be a very unique discussion and very specific and particular thinking regarding how to actually transform the water supply utility, especially when we are talking about Mykolaiv and the war crisis and the situation that Vodokanal are facing right now. So let me give a floor and pass the floor to Honorary Ambassador of Denmark to Ukraine, who is very well known here and needs no introduction. Mr. Ole Mikkelsen, please welcome us.
Can this be? Right, I will just hold it in my hand. So, good morning, everybody. I'm the ambassador of Denmark. I'm very pleased to be here in Mykolaiv this morning, and I'm happy that I can take part in the presentation of the report offline, because that gave me a good excuse for coming to Mykolaiv. And I'm a frequent visitor here. Last time I was here was for the opening of the embassy office a couple of months ago, and I'm proud that the embassy of Denmark now has a permanent presence here in Mykolaiv, and we will be here as long as it takes. And I think we're the only embassy in Ukraine which has this kind of embassy office, and I think it testifies the political will of Denmark to work with the city and the oblast of Mykolaiv in a long-term perspective. And being a frequent visitor here, I can see whenever I come to the city how life is changing. How the first time I was here, I had to wear a helmet, I had to wear a jacket. Things were very, very difficult in terms of security. Now, and there were very few people. Now the city is teeming with life. Last time I was here, there was even a traffic jam, and in the beginning I was a bit annoyed because I was about to miss my meeting, but at the same time I was happy, because traffic jams you only have if there are many people, if there are economic activities going on, if you have people returning. So I think this traffic jam was actually a blessing, in the sense that it signified that life is coming back to Mykolaiv. And this is not because of Denmark. This is because of the citizens of Mykolaiv. It's you who have been working very, very hard to get your city back on its feet. We have been assisting you, but you have made the effort to make it happen. So let me take this opportunity to salute and thank the mayor, the governor, the head of the regional administration, local and regional authorities, national authorities, because they have been involved as well, international organizations, and not least ordinary citizens of the city who have worked very hard to make this happen. So this is, I think, a sign that the Denmark-Mykolaiv partnership is working. Now let me turn to what we're going to be presented with today, the report on the integrity assessment of the municipal water utility Mykolaivvodokanal. And I actually have the report here, and I can tell you it's big. It's 160 pages, so it's very very thorough. I have not read everything because I just got it yesterday, so I just had the opportunity to read the summary and some of the main points. And the assessment was made by the team from Deloitte, and I think we have the authors on the front row. Thank you for your good work. It's very thorough, and it has been mandated by the European Anti-Corruption Program, EUACI. Thanks to the EUACI team for having taken this initiative. But let me first of all express my sincere appreciation of the mayor's initiative and decision to make this happen, because without the mayor's support, this would not have. Where's the mayor? Right? You're right here. You're very modest mayor. And you were hidden behind the pillar, but now I see you. Good to see you. Because I want to say that from the very first time I met the mayor, I was convinced about his sincere commitment to fight corruption, to further integrity in the city. I still remember your words when we met one of the first times, and you explained about your vision about Mykolaiv as a small Denmark on the Black Sea, and you used the word just as affluent, just as innovative, just as green, and not least just as non-corrupt. And this was the first sign that, and signal I got from you that this is your vision. And of course, if you want to realize that vision, you need to ensure that the municipal utilities, including the water utility, the Vodokanal, live up to the highest standards of integrity, because a lot of money is going through the utilities, and you need to make sure that there's no corruption, that the utility lives up to the highest standards of integrity. And I think one more thing I want to highlight is that if you want to strengthen integrity and eradicate corruption, you need to address the issues head on. We can only eradicate corruption if we talk about it. Without mentioning it, it's like the big pink elephant in the room. We all see it, but we don't talk about it. I think it's crucially important to talk about it, to address it, how to reduce the risk. And this is exactly what has happened through this report. It highlights some of the risks that the Vodokanal are facing in terms of integrity. As I said, it's a very detailed report. I hope that maybe at some point we don't need 160 pages to assess the integrity of a municipal company like a Vodokanal, because there are many. I was told that there's 70 Vodokanals in Ukraine, and if you need to do 160 pages on each of them, it will be a lot of work. So I hope that this report can result in kind of a checklist that individual mayors can use if they want to check their water utility or their district heating utility or whatever. So they can simply look at this checklist, seeing, okay, what is missing? Do we have proper procurement procedures? Do we have proper governance? Do we have a structure that ensures that for instance, procurement is done in a transparent and efficient manner? So this can maybe be the next step for EUACI to produce a checklist, one page, or not 160 pages, but a one pager that can be used for that kind of purpose. Now for the substance, I'm given to understand, having just read the executive summary, that the report has identified a number of issues of concern, namely the processes and procedures for public procurement, lack of real elements of corporate governance, and the actual absence of an established system of internal audit and control. Now, these are, of course, important issues that needs to be addressed, and I'm absolutely sure that they will be addressed, that the EUACI, in cooperation with the municipality and the Vodokanal, will address these issues as a matter of urgency. And I would suggest that since Mykolaiv now has a partnership with the Danish city of Aalborg, that maybe you could reach out to your friends in the city of Aalborg, because in Aalborg they have a water utility just like the Vodokanal, and maybe you could use some of the procedures to ensure integrity that they're applying. So this would be something that could be a very practical outcome of this report, that since you have this partnership, you could draw on this. And I think the follow-up is very important, and it's crucial, because it will send a strong signal about Mykolaiv as an integrity city that has a water utility that lives up to the highest standards of integrity. And I'm saying this as a friend of Mykolaiv and a strong supporter from the very beginning of the partnership that we have with this city. And I can tell you that public and political support for the partnership in Denmark is very, very strong. Danes are proud to be the partners of the City of Heroes. They all know the city. Before the partnership, nobody in Denmark had ever heard about Mykolaiv. No, now most people in Denmark, they know the city. And they're proud to be your partners. And there's a lot of support, but at the same time, the Danes have no tolerance when it comes to corruption. And just last week, many of you have seen that a Danish newspaper had a headline about rumors and allegations about a possible corruption in the Mykolaivvodokanal water utility. There was no proof or evidence, but just the allegations, just the mentioning had an impact on public opinion. And sometimes perception is reality. So if we don't address this perception, it will have a negative impact on the political support for the partnership. And I can tell you, because just last Monday we had a group of Danish senior lawmakers visiting Kiev, and this was one of the first questions they asked me, because they had, over the weekend, they had read the Danish newspaper, and they said, "What is this about the Mykolaivvodokanal?" And so this in itself can have a negative impact if it's not going to be addressed. So this integrity assessment that we're going to be presented with today, it will be followed closely, not only by the local community, but also by Danes, because we are your partners. So there will be people in Denmark who will follow what is happening this morning. And they will be focusing on the outcome and the actions taken. And as I said, I'm convinced that all stakeholders, the mayor, the senior management of the Mykolaivvodokanal and the Ministry of Restoration, will ensure that robust and efficient steps are taken as a matter of urgency to follow up on the recommendations of report. And let me conclude by underlining that Denmark and Danes remain committed to continue supporting Ukraine and also the partnership with Mykolaiv. There's no signs of Ukraine fatigue in Denmark. If some of us are looking tired, it's not because of Ukraine, it's simply because we are working a lot. So there's no Ukraine fatigue, and this is not something that you should take for granted. There are other countries where public opinion is shifting. It's not shifting in Denmark, but that makes it even more important that we send strong signals about integrity and the fight against corruption. So once again, many thanks for inviting me to address you this morning, and thank you very much to the team that prepared this thorough report. I look forward to the discussions that we're going to have today in terms of how to improve the system of procurement and the transparency in the operations of the Vodokanal water utility. And I'm convinced that the citizens of Mykolaiv and their elected leaders will continue to work for integrity and continue to fight corruption with the same tenacity, resilience, and fighting power as you displayed when you defended your city against the Russian invaders. And you won that battle, and I'm sure you're also going to win the battle against corruption and the fight for integrity. And now we have an alarm, and I'm not quite sure about the local procedures, but I'm sure somebody will tell us. Thank you for being with us this morning, and I look forward to the discussions that we're going to have.
Так, ну, ми всі не сподівалися, звісно, що це буде.
Well, of course, we did not expect that it would take place so quickly. Let us go downstairs and we will look how long the air raid alarm will take place. Maybe it wouldn't be too long and we'll have an opportunity to come back and go on with our work. So please let us get downstairs. There is the place to sit there. Unfortunately, we cannot conduct the event there, but we can instantly move to networking. You'll have also time to get acquainted with the report. So use your QR codes. You can see them there and we can start the discussion already there. And for everyone who is listening to us in Zoom, we do hope that it will take place in Mykolaiv only. The air raid alarm is only in Mykolaiv and you're safe. But if not, we will inform you by emails so you could reconnect again. Thank you so much. Take care.
Так, все, ми починаємо. Дуже важливо встигнути до нової.
Yes, we do start. It's very important to finish before the next air raid alert because we are not going to wait until it's over. So in any case, we will not get back after the second air raid alert. So let's do it now. Otherwise, another time we should do that online. So let's try to do everything what is possible here and now. Okay, so this exercise on integrity assessment was conducted by request of Oleksandr Fedorovich. He will say a few words about that on his own. And now I'd like to give a floor Alan Christensen, who is the head of European Union Anti-Corruption Initiative, which is the initiative Mykolaiv cooperates with. Mykolaiv is one of the integrity cities from 2022. You saw a lot of our initiatives in cooperation with the city, and Alan will say a little bit more about that. I will switch into English.
Please share some welcome remarks.
Thanks a lot, Julia. I think I will go over here. So welcome to all of you. We are so happy to see so many people offline for this event today and online, also quite a number. And even though we have had this unexpected break due to the air alert, good to see that you didn't disappear, all of you, and I think still quite a number of people in the room here. It's really great. Today we're going to talk about the Mykolaivvodokanal, the water supply enterprise in the city. This is just one project among many activities that the EU Anti-Corruption Initiative are conducting here in Mykolaiv. We have been working with the city since 2022, and we have since then been working with the issues of transparency, integrity, accountability, working with the city council, the city administration, trying to close some gaps for corruption as we identify them. And together with the mayor, we from the very start had a joint ambition of creating some best practices in Mykolaiv for how to do reconstruction. We all know that the situation in Mykolaiv is difficult, and the front line of Russia's war is not far away from here. Nevertheless, the city continues to develop and prepares for better times. And I think that this is the right approach, and I really commend the mayor and his team for taking the lead in moving Mykolaiv forward. It is not a coincidence that we made this integrity assessment of Mykolaivvodokanal. This is an extremely important enterprise for Mykolaiv. We all know the issue about the lack of clean water to Mykolaiv, and big investments will be needed in the coming months and years. And many of them probably will be funded by international donors. And therefore, it's important that an enterprise like Mykolaivvodokanal builds some trust and demonstrate integrity and transparency in its work. We have had quite good experience working with these integrity assessments in a number of cities. And we're also happy that we today have representatives from Vodokanal in Chernivtsivvodokanal and in Zhytomyrvodokanal. Thanks for coming the long way to Mykolaiv. These assessments are actually quite technical exercises. The ambassador could show a document of 150 pages, and I don't think I will recommend everyone to read it. But they are based on international recommendations, not least by the OECD, and are looking into a number of indicators that somehow gives an impression of how the enterprise is working with these issues that are so important for us: integrity, transparency, accountability. Our experts will say much more about that later. I just want to make the point that for us, this is not only a technical report. We actually want to make a difference, and we want to make sure that these reports that we do, including the one now with in Mykolaiv, that they are followed by some specific actions that actually will improve the way the enterprise is working, and will close some gaps for corruption. In terms of Mykolaivvodokanal, we note that the report by Deloitte mentions that there is a significant potential for improvement. Our focus from our side will especially be on procurement, on compliance, financial control, corporate governance, and we will be there to help the enterprise and the city council to improve the situation and provide support when needed. Let me just end by thanking all those that contributed to this exercise: the Deloitte, the staff of the Vodokanal, the city council and administration, my own EUACI staff, for all the good work you have done, also in a quite challenging environment. For us, the involvement of the local stakeholders here is key. Without the local stakeholder and their ownership to the work we are doing, we will not make any progress. So we count on you, and we will be there to support you in this work. And with these few words, I will stop here and not to take more of your time. Thanks for your attention, and I wish you a good seminar today. Thank you.
Thank you. Oleksandr Fedorovich,
Oleksandr Fedorovich, would you come here? Now a very brief welcoming word from Oleksandr Sienkevych, and after that we are going to talk specifically about the assessment. Good afternoon. Since here we have majority of people who communicate in English, I will speak in Ukrainian, and I will speak in Ukrainian. First point, this initiative was supported and actually expressed by me and supported by the European Union Anti-Corruption Initiative to make Mykolaiv more transparent and to become more effective for cooperation with international partners, and especially with Denmark, who supports us during the war, and they, so to say, adopted us during the war. So what about corruption in Ukraine? Do we have it in Ukraine? Do we have it in Mykolaiv? I would lie if I say that we don't have it. Corruption is where people are, where they do something. At last steering committee, which took place in Kiev, in the EUACI office, I said that those who are fighting corruption in Ukraine and who are the pioneers of combating corruption in Ukraine are actually one of the biggest corruptionists. So I will not talk a lot about anti-corruption measures in Mykolaiv. I'd like to express my gratitude to Denmark government and specifically to Ole Mikkelsen for his particular attention to Mykolaiv city. I always say that every actions, every project they are all about people. If there are relations to people, when the people are engaged, then these projects are successful. If not, they are not successful. So today we see that this project between Denmark and Mykolaiv was successful, and we have no other project in Ukraine like that. I would like to express my gratitude to Alan Pak Christensen for his tremendous work. He is very creative in what he does. We communicate with him a lot, and actually this initiative on assessment of Mykolaivvodokanal's integrity raised in one of our talks and finally was developed in this project. I would like to express my gratitude to Yulia Mincheva and Taras Sluchyk, for whom Mykolaiv became, I would like to say, the second home. I'm sure that they do care about it. And I would like to express my gratitude to Deloitte company, which is going to present the results of their job and why it is important. I do believe that Mykolaiv has a lot of issues for improvement. There are many issues to work on. We are not actually afraid of finding approaches to work with our communal enterprises. My mother said once that it is better to acknowledge that you are not right and to improve than to be not right in all cases and in all times. So we have to seek for ways of improvement to make us better, to make things the better than they can. So other cities will be able to follow our experience. I'm sure that Deloitte is going to work with other cities. Should they find any best practices, we will be happy to take them over and to implement them in our enterprises. Today, we are going to talk about Mykolaivvodokanal. We are going to talk about number of effort enterprises, which are Mykolaiv Obltrans and Mykolaiv Oblenergo. The managers of these enterprises are here with us, so they have to prepare for further work on their further assessment as well. At the end, I would like to say thank you to everyone. Corruption is about the human being, about daily challenges. When students asked me during one of the meetings what actually is the most difficult at your job, I said, this is an everyday combat with temptations. And temptations is actually something which is closely related to the corruption. I don't believe in people integrity. I believe in systems. I believe that system can make changes, and we should introduce necessary rules. We have to change them. We should change the paradigm. And I hope that the work which was conducted by Deloitte company will allow us to do that. We will succeed in that, and they will have, the Mykolaivvodokanal company will have 3 months to introduce the amendments. And yesterday during the working meeting, I said that the ones who are going to obstruct this process, there is no place for them in our environment. So they actually should not obstruct us what we do. So that corruption is all about the past. We will not stay with it. We will change rules, paradigm, and the system. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. So when we have such a task to conduct the assessment of integrity, of course, we had the open and transparent tender procedure. During that, Deloitte company won, who is the contractor for this assignment. So I'm giving the floor to Deloitte team and our partner and the head of the project team, which was directly dealing for almost half of the year With that, Stabarannik and Anton Bычkov, please, could you provide a short presentation? They will stay after the meeting as well, so let us leave all the questions for the time after the discussion during network and coffee. You will be able to pose any questions, not now, please. Please, the floor is yours. Good day, dear colleagues. My name is Yegor Grigorenko. I'm the partner of Deloitte company in Ukraine. I'm the head of our practices of consulting and risk management as it is. But these projects, this is not the only project which we have in cooperation with the EUACI. We had several projects like that, and we are going on with them. They are under my direct supervision. And it's not in vain, it's not accidentally, because for us, it's a very important systematic work for the changes for the better in Ukraine to take place not only at some national level, where we are cooperating a lot with the public sector, but where it is the most important and felt by the people at the level of the communities, the cities of Ukraine. This is one of the projects which is significant for us. So not the whole of our team joined me today, only two key experts, Ostap Barannik, who was already introduced. He used to be the head of the operational team, the key legal expert, Anton Bычkov, from our side, but altogether, the team included approximately 15 years, the experts in all the line spheres. Unfortunately, we could not take them all here today. Still, I think that we would be able, three of us, to cover all the additional questions which could emerge. So just in a minute, I'll try to give the floor to Ostap, and the majority of presentation will be given by him because he's the operational manager. But before that, a couple of words which are rather important to be mentioned before providing the presentation. First, what's the objective of this exercise, of this activity? What we were trying to do, and in comparison with your expectations, what we didn't try to do. This is not the audit. This is not about the past. We were not trying to assess some past achievements or to find past mistakes of the communal enterprise. Definitely, during the work, we found some of the facts or processes which were also assessed, but it was never an objective. That was secondary. This is not about the past, it's about the future. This is about how we can form such a plan of actions for the future, for the communal enterprise, which would help the Mykolaivvodokanal and the city to develop quicker, to solve its issues, to solve the issues of the community, and highly desirable in the cooperation with the international partners who would be able to provide financial support, expertise in the widest, in the broadest sense of the word. So this cooperation used to be and is still, because it goes on. We are still working with our colleagues from Vodokanal about the few further actions. This is about the future. It's not an audit, it's about the future. Secondly, what's important to register? The outcomes, the results in different components. They could be higher or lower, but sometimes they can lead to questions. Why is it so low? We do not compare Vodokanal with some regulatory framework in Ukraine. We do not compare them with other Vodokanals, that is, water utilities of Ukraine. Though we have the opportunity to compare, but we were working within other projects under the patronage of Anti-Corruption Initiative of the European Union with 3 more water utilities, Vodokanals, and we are also working with several more of them within other projects. So we've got such experience. Still, it's not about that. This is an attempt to compare with a certain best practice, which is still being shaped in Ukraine. And if the assessment of 3 or 5 out of 5, it does not mean that everything is bad. It just means that there is some space for improvement. And together with the colleagues from Vodokanal, we are trying to look at the plan, how during the next months and maybe the next year, they can use this potential, how they can open it. Moreover, to get rid of this question, finally, as we were working with other water utilities, I may say that in the vast majority of components, the assessment here and the grades are not lower and sometimes are even higher than in other water utilities. So from this perspective, I would insist that we should focus on the next steps and whether we recommend to focus your attention and the work on the improvement of situation, but not on certain figures which on their own can create not a very comprehensible impression. This is my second comment, which I consider to be rather important. And the third one, this activity finally is not only about Mykolaivvodokanal, it's also about Mykolaiv city and other communal enterprises. Similar integrity assessments have been conducted also by EUACI, and simultaneously they are done with other consultants about other types of communal enterprises. The same work has been done and is still done in other regions, in other integrity assessments. So it's finally about the formation of methodology, which can be used in the communities all over Ukraine. From this perspective, this project was rather important for us because, formally speaking, it seems to me, out of water utility projects, this is the first one where we finally made this methodology so perfect that we finally covered 90% of what should have been covered. And here I would like to use this opportunity and to thank the colleagues from water utility Mykolaivvodokanal. We didn't always have very easy cooperation, but it was always open and constructive. The colleagues from water utilities, and I'm speaking about all of the levels, not only the management, but from the middle level, who we were working with, and our experts were discussing with them certain processes and collecting data. Sometimes we saw the wish to understand more. Sometimes we saw that they disagree, but we never saw any closeness, the wish to hide anything. And in this sense, this attitude was really useful for us because the report, which is in the end of the process, and methodology, which was polished, should be the basis for the use in other communal enterprises and territorial communities of Ukraine. I really thank the team of the water utility, Mykolaivvodokanal. We wouldn't be able to do that without you, and it deserves for a round of applause. Thank you. Here, that's it from my introduction speech. I give the floor to Ostap, who will tell about more details on the structure of the project. Thank you. Good day, dear colleagues. I'm happy to welcome all of you here. Let me remind in a nutshell how the project was moving on from the perspective of the timeline. We started it in the beginning of August. So then we started almost instantly working on the methodology. Let me explain. As it was mentioned before, we had previous projects with water utilities, and we did not develop the methodology from scratch. We were focused on the integration into the existing methodology of the lessons which we learned from the previous projects. And basing upon that, we polished, as it was mentioned above, the methodology, which further on we used during the assessment process. So the assessment was going on, as you can see, till recently. Together with my colleagues, we just recently coordinated and approved some of the points which we had to speak about. So now we are in the point where we have the bright yellow star. That is the public presentation. And as it was mentioned before, it's not the end. This is not the objective of the project. The objective of the project, as it was mentioned above, are the practical recommendations for the enterprise and for the owner. That's important to emphasize. We were assessing, and it was mentioned, but again, I'd like to emphasize, we were assessing both the enterprise and in some points the owner. So these recommendations are targeted for the enterprise and the owner and their common work. So the next important, and as for me the most important step, is to take the developments which we identified within the assessment process. We should separate the most practical and relevant recommendations, and taking into account the available resources of the city and the enterprise, we should concentrate on their implementation. That's in a nutshell how the schedule looked like. Now let me remind you, if you did not get acquainted with that, how we shaped and which elements are included in the methodology. The first one is the name and the short definition of the indicator, when we explain what the indicator is and what it assesses. The next one is the benchmark. That is the perfect picture for this sphere. according to which and with what we compare the current situation. The next one is minimal score. What's the minimal score, what the enterprise can have? That's the 0, according to our methodology. Then partial score, if the enterprise is located somewhere between the minimal score and maximum score, we offer two approaches, either 1, 3, 5, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, where it was reasonable from our perspective, where we would need such detalization. So the next element is maximum score, that is 5 points, and what's incredibly important as an element is indicator weight. So we have 3 weights factors, that is high, medium, and low. So what was our approach for that? We assessed the indicator from the perspective of the negative impact in case if there is an issue. If this indicator is incredibly important, that is 3. If this indicator is more of an additional or supplemental one, it got the grade of 1. So multiplying this point on a weight, we get the assessment score. Okay. How did we assess? How did we approach the assessment of the enterprise? We separated 9 directions within which we assessed the process: general management, communication, services, corporate governance, ethical aspects, public procurement, asset management, finance and economy, and people. Here I should mention that during the previous methodology, we did not separate a block of people. It was covered within the indicator of general management. But again, learning the lessons of the previous project, as we could see the importance of this sphere, we separated it as a separate block. Within the methodology, we have defined 87 indicators, and the maximum hypothetical sum of points which can the enterprise get is 1,025 points. So now, in a nutshell, let's look at the factual results in all the 9 spheres, and then we will speak about the key directions of the assessment. So, as you can see, the overall general management had, in fact, 67 people, 49, corporate governance 52 points, ethical aspects 56 points, finance and economy 55 points, asset management 57 points, and public procurement 42 points. Altogether, so if we assess it all together, that is 55%. If you pay attention to that, that is 579 points of 1,025 possible. Then let me tell you more details about the direction of general management. Here, what did we see, in fact, here? In comparison with some of the previous water utilities which we looked at, the enterprise has the existing created direction of strategic management. So, Directorate of Strategic Management, they have the authority and existing processes which deal with that. But it's important to mention here that the strategy itself, because of the circumstances in the external and internal environment, claim the update of the strategy, taking into account the changes of these circumstances and taking into consideration the updated master plan of the city, which, as far as I know, has to be soon approved. So here, we recommend to update the strategy, taking into consideration the wholesome vision, which would include the master plan and the comprehensive vision of the work with donors. The next point is project management. Here we should mention that really the enterprise is really actively working with the projects which are funded by the international financial organizations. the partners on development and donors. So, from the perspective of the management of specific projects, we can see the well-structured approach. The colleagues showed the necessary attributes of the project management in this sphere. But I need to mention that from the perspective of the internal project initiatives, which I would say are more created for a different part, not technical part, and the portfolio management as it is, it has some space for improvement. That is why we advise our colleagues to focus on this sphere. The next element is the work, as I mentioned above, with the international financial organizations and the development partners and donors. Here we should also mention that the city is very active, working with a big number of donors, but again, we would like to emphasize our attention of the colleagues on the necessity to shape long-term vision, which would be embedded as the foundation for the updated development strategy, together with the approved master plan of the city, which we have already mentioned today. Additionally, we should mention that in the enterprise, they have the well-approved organizational structure and also the staff employees. The majority of the processes are formalized. Still, there are some of the processes which need additional formalization and more systematic update. We recommend to work on that as well. So, speaking about recommendations, as I already mentioned, this is the wholesome development strategy for the enterprise, which would take into consideration the changes of the current situation, the updated master plan of the city, the long-term vision of the work with donors, international partners for development, and other partners. And also, it's important to emphasize that the operational planning, which is also working as of now and is used by now, but still we would like to advise to work here more in connection with the strategy, so as the operational planning would be the continuation of the strategic one, cascading the objectives, the initiatives, and the operational planning itself. The next recommendation is the update of the accounting and registration policies according to the best practices and the transition to the new software. As far as we know, before the war in Ukraine, we used almost everywhere the software which as of now is prohibited. So the companies are providing this transfer to the similar software products. And we need to pay attention to, first of all, the process of the transfer, and secondly, it's important to take into account the risks of the existing similar products at the market, which, to our own perspective, can also bear additional risks. Another element which we should mention is the energy efficiency. Here we can see additional potential in the expansion of the functions of SCADA system from the perspective of the improvement of control over energy consumption by the pump stations. So the improvement of energy efficiency of the enterprise. That's not it. Those are the key points I'd like to mention in the sphere of general management. And now I'm giving the floor to Yegor, who will tell us more about corporate management and ethical aspects. Thank you.
Дякую.
Thank you.
А можу, попросити ще?
May I ask you to give me a clicker, colleagues? I will start to be as brief as possible. So corporate governance is something which may not look urgent in wartime. And from the point of view of operational activities, there are a lot of risks and recommendations which would you see in the presentation, they will not have any urgent operational effect, and they could be seen as the ones which could be deprioritized, but unfortunately they are very important in order to continue cooperation with that international donors and partners who now cooperate with the city and Vodokanal. They would need that to have a tool and to protect their own interests and to cooperate. And also it is extremely important for the perspective from the point of view of attraction of new partners and investors. Without addressing these issues of corporate governance, it wouldn't be possible to cooperate with international investors. Main room for improvement here, we identified two of them, but they are quite complicated, and both would require attention not only from the communal enterprise, but from the city as well. The first one can be covered and implemented only in cooperation of the owner, I mean here, the city and the enterprise itself. And I talk here about the board of this company, the board of the enterprise, according to the recommendations and practices, and I mean supervisory board, within the framework of Euro integration requirements and within the framework of national changes. There is a draft law which is almost adopted, which provides such recommendations and requirements for joint stock companies which are now in hands of the state. It will become mandatory. So we expect that in next 12 months, Verkhovna Rada will set these rules for all such enterprises. Without the supervisory board, it wouldn't be possible to ensure proper functioning of the enterprise, and that board should include at least 50% plus one independent members. For boards with 5-7 members, 5 will be the minimum number. At least 3 of them would be required to be independent ones. So without sustaining to this norm, it wouldn't be possible to report that this tool was achieved. Also, this tool is a bridge to the second element of the recommendation, and this is the improvement of internal control environment. At the end of the day, this is the responsibility not only of operational management as such, I mean here director and or managing director, it's an ultimate responsibility of the supervisory board. What am I talking about here? Internal control environment contains 3 fields of protection, and they are all present now in Mykolaivvodokanal. There are elements which could be improved though. So the first sphere of protection already has a lot of elements in place, and in some rooms there are regulated processes, and not only the execution but the control and checks, and these processes are related to the water quality control regarding labor safety and so on. But this regulation as of now covers not all the processes but only the portion of them. Majority of cross-cutting processes are beyond of the attention of this first field of protection. To consolidate that in order to assess the most important operational risks is not conducted, and it cannot be conducted because there are not enough data. The second line of defense, where compliance and risk management exists, there are much more opportunities for the improvement. These functions are implemented in the enterprise, but they are delegated to the staff members and managers of subdivisions which are dealing with other matters as well. This is not the best practice. In order to ensure the best level of control, it is necessary to have at least, for example, a compliance as a separate line of activities. And the third line of defense, which is absolutely independent internal audit, considering my previous comments that this third line of defense, internal control, is conducted only where the defense is set on the first and the second line of defense, and one part of the work is the broadening extension. But as to the other side, and here we return to the supervisory board, it is necessary to create an independent, absolutely independent audit, and that requires an existing of an independent supervisory board to whom this independent audit, internal audit, will report. This is a comprehensive issue. It's not possible to solve it in next 3 months. I would say that not all the issues require such urgency, but I would recommend not to postpone that for later, because what regards the creation of supervisory board and the establishment of higher requirements for internal control environment, this is something which would be expected by international partners. And from this point of view, this block of recommendations is so important to me. And I'd like to say just a few words about ethical aspects. An overall score is 56%, which we put here. What it entails, is it a lot or not? From the very beginning, I'd like to say that in our communication and work with documents and with people from Vodokanal, we haven't identified any critical issues of unethical behavior. And at the level of higher senior management, we have identified quite high level of understanding of this problematic. So we have identified a lot of positive issues, and in anti-corruption program, we saw articulated ethical principles and standards. So that's good. This assessment, comparing to other water canals and communal enterprises we worked with, is not the worst one. You shouldn't treat it as the one which is critical. But in order to make it in line with the expectations of European partners and international practices and national practices, which are set in Ukraine in the countrywide perspective, there are some issues which could be done. Unfortunately, these are on the starting points, and the first one is the code of ethics, which could be embedded into anti-corruption program. Yes, anti-corruption program has some points, but this topic should be addressed separately, and the code of ethics should contain specific policies which should be implemented further in the communal enterprise itself. And the second point, and it's not about nice phrases, is actually regarding specific steps of actions. The culture of ethics and compliance in the committee should be introduced from the bottom to the top. So all the people in the company should comply with the same rules. And it's not enough to have the code of ethics itself. That would be just a basic. The code is something we are built, but people have to understand every point of it and all the actions. In order to do, they should be trained. Therefore, specific training programs should be deployed, and they should not be an abstractive ones. They should be tailored to the specificity of your company. But such projects have been already implemented in companies and in some regions, and we would suggest to use the practical experience from other companies. But here, I think these are two main priorities. So this code of ethics and ethics culture would be seen not only from outside, but to be consciously applied by every staff member of the company. That were main points I wanted to discuss. Now I'd like to give a floor to Anton Bychko. He will say just a few words about procurements. Thank you, Yegor. Public procurements. This is a very important direction. We have analyzed public procurements in other projects, and we looked very closely to this direction in Mykolaivvodokanal as well. Actually, what are the problems we identified? They are quite characteristics to such a type of enterprise. The same problems are almost in majority of communal enterprises, and also there are additional factors like war. That's why the public procurement departments have increased load. Also, it is important to mention that the methodology of our analysis when the enterprise fulfills basic requirements of the legislation, this is the starting point of the assessment. When assessing all these spheres, when we say about best practices, about removing gray zones, which could give grounds or be the gaps for the corruption or for uncertainty. So in principle, we see that the problematics, which is quite characteristical to majority of communal enterprises, is present here as well. So public procurement processes basically are in line with the existing legislation. At the same time, we understand then that years 2022 and 2023 were the years of simplifying requirements to procurements due to the martial law. But we have to take into account as well that number of contracts concluded increased a lot, and it also takes place in other vodokanals around the country. But we see that 2023 became the year of volumes of procurement. So our recommendation would be to decrease the practice of direct contracts, which became very common during the last 2 years. So the enterprise, in fact, adhere to the limits set in the legislation, but the best practice would be to decrease these levels and to organize more open auctions. We will decompose the recommendations into specific steps for the enterprise, but this is one of the fields which requires reinforcement and improvement in general. And on what regards to other issues, it is necessary to say that the procurement processes are not very well regulated at the level of the enterprise in general. The process of justifying the need for procurement, process of formalization of the procurement, they are not articulated properly in internal documents, and that creates gray zones. So the company should work more about that, and we would suggest respective recommendations to eliminate that. There are some issues which are also important. This is a clear justification and transparent justification of necessity to conduct procurements using direct contracts. This is something where the enterprise can significantly improve its activities, and also planning of procurements would help the procurement department to be prepared to the procurements, and also it facilitates the transparency of the process. So these are the key recommendations. They are reflected here in the presentation, but I would say that the next step is the decomposition of these recommendations into specific steps which could be taken by the enterprise. Main message here would be the following. The public procurement department in the enterprise should be institutionally improved, and we will talk about that in more details with the enterprise directly, but this is actually the trend. 2023 and 2022 are the years where there was an additional load on this department because this is the enterprise of critical infrastructure, and we understand that there are a lot of elements of best practices which should be introduced there. And as to the next steps, I would like to give the floor to Ostap. Ostap, thank you. Anton, can I have a clicker? Just a few more words. We have talked about that already, but I'd like to underline once again. The most important element of this project actually are the recommendations which will be developed on the basis of this assessment. As you see on this schedule, we are going to finalize and to detail recommendations together with the enterprise, all the key recommendations which would be the most useful for the enterprise. And after that, there will be a technical phase of closing the project. So what do we have next? We should work on the recommendations, and that will be the end of the project. I will stop here. Yulia, over to you. Yes, so you finalize the project, and we then will take on your work and continue implementing the recommendations. Now we have a short time for the discussion, not only the assessment, but the importance of the priorities for transformation. I would like to invite Taras Sluchyk, head of the EUACI Cities of Integrity, Borys Dudenko, Director of Mykolaivvodokanal, also Yegor Grigorenko, Deloitte partner, and Roman Ilyk, Director of Zhytomyrvodokanal. And also online, I hope that we would have online Oleksandr, who is the Director of the Board of the Corporate Governance Professional Association. So he is one of the authors on corporate governance, which was just recently adopted by Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine. And also, I hope that we're going to have online with us Andriy Kolesnyk, who is the Director General of Chernivtsivvodokanal, which is finalizing, as of now, the work on improvements after the assessment. So they are half a year ahead of this case, so I hope they will share their experience with us. So the first question to you all will be to Oleksandr. I think that will be the question which journalists would like to ask. I would like to say that we have a public presentation, and one of the issues for today is to give as much information as possible regarding the assessment itself and what is going to be next and what should we follow, and to explain to the citizens of the city. So the question which is interesting to everyone is the following. Are changes coming? What we as city and the owner should have as a priority in working with Vodokanal, and what actually is what will be the vector for further cooperation based on this assessment?
Thank you. First of all, I would like everyone to pay attention to the words of the representatives of Deloitte, that today it's not just the wish of the city of Mykolaiv to change the management system in one of the communal enterprises. This is the requirement of time. So to cooperate further with the international partners, we will need to change the approaches in the management of the enterprises which are important in our city. Water channel, the water canal, is one of the most important enterprises. And I think, what do we have? Air raid alarm? So please finish your point, because this is the question which worries all the presentees, and then we'll have the pause, and you will get the information in the emails. Yes, we're doing all of that publicly. We'll create the conference so as everybody could see the changes, and also so as we could further, we shouldn't be silent about that, or we shouldn't stop that. These processes are launched and launched publicly. The plans have been mentioned for the public awareness, so we will have to report about that as well. I'm grateful to Deloitte company for such a work. It is important that, and we heard it for many times, that it was not the assessment for the work done. It is, I would say, the comprehensive observation or examination of the patient for the sake of further treatment. And so we are facing the tasks as the enterprise, and we need to accomplish those tasks, because again, those are not just ideas of Mr. Sienkevych or Ole Mikkelsen or Alan Pack Christensen. Those are challenges of time, of today. And a very interesting idea I'd like to mention today. We have the partner city, this is Aalborg city in Denmark. So we would ask the representative of the water utility, Vodokanal, to become a member of the supervisory board of Mykolaivvodokanal, so as they could keep in pace with us and to understand what is happening here. It's important that our enterprise should improve not only in the information field of our state, but also in the information field of Denmark, because I was speaking with our journalists when they are providing some really substantial investigations or other ones, they need to understand that if they are not done properly, it may even harm our enterprise and community than just small hype with the bad investigation and with the heading of some article. We should all be responsible about our work. The Mykolaivvodokanal to the use of money and planning its work, and the journalists in their turn and all the rest to the highlighting of this work. I thank everyone in any case, and again, these changes are irreversible. We will not be able to stop them. They will not depend on me or the Director of Water Utility Vodokanal. They will more depend on the City Council, which will have to approve these changes in the structure of the enterprise as well, and the creation of the supervisory board and so on. But in any case, I'm sure that the MPs of the local council will support this idea, and all the involved key stakeholders of this story will support all of that. And again, we are awaited for other enterprises, for the work with other enterprises, and the work which is done today in Mykolaiv will be done in other cities. We are ready to take the best practices. Mykolaivvodokanal is a unique enterprise from the perspective of the organization of drinkable water for Ukraine, but it's not unique in case of its issues and problems. So we need to solve them and improve the work of this enterprise. Thank you for your attention. Thank you. Thank you so much. I think it, of course, please, I would like to add.
The red, blue, yellow, blue, azul. Okay.
So we've tried to provide verification, external assessment of security risks. So if you don't mind, we can go on. Do you mind? I can see that everybody takes a risk personally, so I hope that everything will be okay. Okay, then, let us go on. Though it used to be almost the final, in fact, speech. Still, I would like Taras to describe why it is important. Why do you support this program? Why it is important not only for the program, but also for the water utility first and foremost, and of the city itself and all the city residents, please? Does my mic work? Oh, yes, it does. Thank you, Olga. Let me start with something really distant. Mostly, our communal enterprises used to be, on the one hand, critical institutions providing critically important services. On the other hand, what is happening in the state enterprises, and recently the parliament has approved the new legislation in corporate management, very rarely we implemented some elements of corporate management, though those enterprises are not less critical than the state ones, and sometimes they're even more important than the state ones. So, the implementation of the elements of corporate management, the supervisory board's internal audit, compliance, high quality and transparent, efficient procurement practices are not just a requirement of time. This is the tool which will allow the enterprise to involve much more investments and to communicate in the same language with the potential investors. That is why these spheres, which I was just listing, public procurement, internal audit and control, elements of corporate management, and real compliance, is not just the question which is already an obligation for the part of state enterprises. But on the other hand, if the enterprises want to be different from the others, to involve more investments, and to efficiently respond to the extraordinary challenges, because Mykolaiv is now facing extraordinary challenges. They cannot be compared with other enterprises in our challenges, so it should be leading. On the one hand, on the other hand, there should be practices which are really working, what Oleksandr mentioned in Ukraine and not only in Denmark. A very simple example, I would like to mention Lviv City Council, which recently created the supervisory board in Mykolaivvodokanal water utility. I would like to say that the first draft of the decision at the session of the City Council was introduced, if I'm not mistaken, 4 years ago, after the amendments to the Code of Ukraine, Article 78, Part 1, which foresaw the creation of supervisory boards. So, for us it is important that the enterprises of critical infrastructure, water utility, and also heating and transport should be efficient, transparent, and accountable for the citizens who are getting their services and the international partners. And it seems to me that together with the water utility, we will be able to define some of the key measures which we will be able to make as quick as possible to show that Vodokanal is ready to improve its efficiency on the one hand, and on the other hand will define the long-term measures which will help in the strategic plan to become more efficient and to lead to better results and to attract more investments. Transparency and accountability is about money. More transparency, more accountability, more the more money the institution gets, not only internally but externally. Because if we are inefficiently using the taxes which we are paying, then we cannot ask for external help and investments. First, we need to efficiently use the available resource, and then together with the partners, we can involve other resources. So as a conclusion, I'm totally sure, and our ambition, together with the EUACI, as the biggest program of the United Union, which is implemented by the Danish government, is to help enterprises minimize the risks. The risks exist always. The issue is how to minimize them. And what the Deloitte colleagues said, and I'm sure that you, as the expert, the director, can confirm, rather often the challenges which you face, they can be faced by other communal enterprises all over the country. But I'm sure that the same ambition is at the city mayor and the city council and the embassy and we as a program. that Mykolaivvodokanal should be the best in the accountability, transparency, minimization of risks, and other water canals should come and look how it is working in Mykolaiv. And in the same way, the international partners communicating who should get additional investments, who should be supported in Ukraine, the first point which should occur to them that Mykolaivvodokanal exists and we need to cooperate with it because they can have more. And no one should have a single idea that they can have any of the corrupt risks or insufficient level of transparency or accountability. Where we can, we are ready to help if there is the request from the management of Vodokanal and the team of the city mayor. We are always open and always ready to support such an assessment, the planned development among other communal enterprises of critical infrastructure, but it's also important that the management of these enterprises should see it as a tool for development of themselves and the enterprises. Thank you. Thank you. You know that we have a shelter, you can have Wi-Fi there, and you can watch our broadcast online. You will be sent a link now, so please, everybody should have access because I don't want to pose danger for you. So now we are joined by Oleksandr Lysenko, who is the member of the Board of Directors of the Professional Association of Corporate Management. Oleksandr, could you add to what was mentioned as we are speaking about the discussion of the importance of supervisory boards? Which main issues it can solve or help solve, and what do you need to keep in mind for the owners, for the management, when we select this way for development? Thank you, Yulia. Thank you, and I welcome all the colleagues. Thank you for the invitation. Unfortunately, I couldn't join you personally, by the way, because I had a meeting where I was involved to help one of the state enterprises to provide the proper reform of corporate governance. Yes, as it was already mentioned for multiple times today, the law on corporate governance of the state enterprises, which was recently adopted, I was lucky enough to be one of its main authors. But the issue, why we had to adopt it. Today, we are speaking a lot about the independent supervisory boards, how they will be able to improve the practices of corporate governance, but I'd like to remind all of you that the independent supervisory boards were emerging in the state enterprises in 2016 already. Unfortunately, since 2016, we did not see the proper effect of the corporate governance which we were expecting. And we wasted 8 years to implement the next stage of the reform of corporate governance. What do I mean? I would like to say that the creation of supervisory boards itself, even if the majority of them are independent, does not create, well, I would say as they are. It's a bit different. This is the first point which I'd like to emphasize. Secondly, now we finalized the work on the law about state enterprises. So now we are able to start the work on the law on communal enterprises. It's important to understand the principle of proportionality of the requirements of corporate governance. What suits Naftogaz shouldn't definitely suit Ukroboronprom, or shouldn't definitely suit Vodokanal. As an example, we can speak about the financial institutions, both in Ukraine and in the world. If we are speaking about Ukraine, the banks are important, who have substantial influence onto the financial stability of the country. Their requirement is not to have the majority of independent ones. There are different tools of corporate governance. This is the second point. And thirdly, being public and transparent. That is super important as a component when we speak about the changes in the corporate governance. But the practices of information publication shouldn't be directly connected with the creation of the institution of supervisory board. It's a bit broader. If we come back to the cases in the state enterprises, we will see that transparency of these enterprises, in the majority of cases, not in all of the cases, even the strategic important ones, not the ones which we would like to see, and our international partners, the donors, we still have not achieved what we'd like to, and we hope that this law will be able to change that. And maybe the last element still I'd like to emphasize, when we are speaking about the proper corporate structure, the proper corporate governance, we mean the cooperation with the international partners and the transformation of the companies to the attractive for investments. As for communal enterprises, state enterprises, you cannot invest in them because legally those are the atavisms of the corporate forms which we still have in the current legislation. And now we are getting ready with the legislation to correct that. Still, corporatization is also a very important element which will definitely should be implemented and will impact this being public, being transparent, and the necessary systems of checks and balances. This is my short message. Thank you. In fact, it's really reasonable, and I'm happy that you emphasize that corporate governance is not equal just to have a supervisory board, which could be nominal. This is a very exhaustive list of different practices and changes into the processes which would provide proper corporate governance and its efficiency. That is now, let me give the floor to the director of the water canal, which has several years of the successful experience of implementation of different projects with the support of the World Bank. Those are the projects which are expected by the citizen residents, the replacement of pumps and tubes. We won't be able to show you all the slides, we will send them out, but still, in a nutshell, could you tell what helps you in practice, first of all, to be such a reliable partner and to successfully implement big projects? Which elements of corporate governance or any other points which you used as a practitioner? And you're ready to say that this is what you're ready to share. And secondly, could you shortly share your experience of cooperation with the supervisory board? Why is it for you, as the head of the enterprise, is an advantage and helps you more than is some restriction for you?
Good afternoon. First of all, I'd like to express my gratitude to the mayor and to organizers for inviting me. This is a very important experience to me. This is the first event of such a type where the assessment of the enterprise of such scale is assessed. I would like to share my impressions. I work in Zhytomyr not for very long, only from 2022. Before that, I worked in Dnipro-Kirovohrad Oblast Vodokanal. We have introduced projects on accreditation by World Bank, and what I'd like to share. Zhytomyr is actually successful because the mayor has set the main task to reach the transparency at all platforms, at all meetings, at all levels when implementing activities with entailing international investments. The main request is the transparency of the information on such activities and their implementation. What regards to supervisory boards, I believe that the report went too far in this regard. Is for me, the supervisory board is not an inspector on combating the corruption. This is a body which should support the manager to manage the enterprise and to be an intermediary between the authorities, between the owner and the management to take justified decisions. So this is the way we're trying to work in Zhytomyr. We discuss respective issues with the supervisory board, like attraction of credit resources, investments, plans for the future. These are actually the issues we discuss with supervisory board. But if any of the worker of the enterprise would like to engage into the corruption, supervisory board will not catch him. That's a very frank thought of yours. We all understand that, but nevertheless, we all should have some safeguards which would prevent such cases. Boris Leonidovich, now I have a question to you. What do you believe and how do you see? What are the priorities for you in 2024? What challenges are important for you in the process of this transformation? What can you comment on that? Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for coming and listen. We had such an assessment in Chernivtsi and in Chervonograd, if I remember correctly. So this is the first project like that, and I'd like to pay due attention to the aspects which were included into the report. And as our colleagues has shared from Deloitte, we are talking not about the past, but about the future. And I'd like to return a little bit to the past in order to understand what we are going to have in the future. So the first and foremost, I'd like to express my gratitude for all the work done. Starting from 2022 on April 12th, in half a year, we will have a tragical date. It was the day when Mykolaiv lost the water supply. So it was really difficult to solve who should stay without the water, because water supply was organized not for 24/7, but for the provision of water periodically. So, well, it was a time of tough decisions. At that time, it was very difficult to deal with compliance, with supervisory boards, with everything. But nevertheless, I'd like to thank you to Deloitte for their assessment now, because now really it is up to the point and up to time. All the recommendations, I've read the report. Well, all the recommendations which are provided, some of them we know already, and the simplest one which were provided, we already implement into life. If you come to our website, and I'm talking now about the simplest one, visit our website, you'll see that some of the recommendations are reflected there already. So it's for example, vacancies. We have published all the vacancies which are not filled as of today. Also, we have provided such a nice tool. This is a separate page for donors. It's the closed one, but it is possible to authorize and to see what are our needs, what are our projects which are now in the progress of implementation, and also to see what projects were already taken by some donors for implementation. So all the recommendations are taken into account. Then in working groups, we are going to develop mechanisms for their implementation. And the most important, we should keep what is still working, what hasn't broke. Yes, the war is still here. Yes, it's not that critical situation we had in 2022. But to the question, why haven't you published this or that contract, I would say simply, our enemy follows every hour step, every hour publication, everything. So every publication should be checked against the fact that we will not be attacked because we publish something. So I will give you a very brief example. In 2022, Germans brought vacuum escalator. This is a very expensive equipment. It costs 700,000 euros. And the information about it was published in 1 month after it came to us. It arrived, and it was almost all the time hidden in the premises, so the drones wouldn't catch it. We should be very careful about that because they can destroy it anytime if they'll get where this equipment is hidden. So our Vodokanal is the one enterprise who has ISO 9001 and the only one which has the ISO certificate on labor protection. Our team is very powerful and very experienced. It is ready for challenges and changes, and we should maximally use all the work which was done for us by Deloitte company. We are very grateful for it. Thank you very much. I hope that in the course of our future work, you will receive more ISO certificates regarding the control system and quality system, which will demonstrate further amendments and which then demonstrate that the quality of services for citizens increased. And that will also cause the decrease of budgetary support and all other funds provided. And I'd like to mention that except for the issues you've mentioned, which were implemented from the very beginning of assessment of recommendations, we continue working on review of procurement processes, and very soon there will be an order of the mayor regarding that issue, so we cooperate closely with Vodokanal to improve the situation with procurement. So should we have the assessment in few months, we would have quite a higher assessment, but nevertheless. Now I'd like to give the floor to Chernivtsi. Thank you very much for waiting so long, for waiting through all our area alerts. I see that we have colleagues online. Please do share briefly how your life changed after the assessment and what. Yes, we see that you are all very happy. Please do share with one example. Unfortunately, won't be able to listen to all of your presentation, but please do share the main changes which were implemented. Hello, glory to Ukraine. First of all, I'd like to say hello to Mykolaiv city. I said my personal greetings to everyone who is there, and I'd like to mention that Chernivtsivvodokanal had quite a different field of assessment. We had 8 fields and 54 indicators. We have collected 437 points out of 630. We didn't have human resources section, but well, here you see, together with me, Oleksandr, who is a deputy director, who is responsible for public procurements, which is a very important sphere for us as well. So I'd like to say a few words about implementation experience, and I will share briefly about positives and negatives. As to The first one, I would say that we conducted a huge amount of work. We had a lot of discussions with Deloitte company. We had a lot of meetings online and offline, and also we cooperated with city council teams. So for many issues, we found points for understanding. For some of them, we also expressed our arguments and we convinced them with something. So I would start from public procurements because public procurements are one of the most important fields. Today, with the help of an EUACI and Deloitte company, engaged into the development of all the processes which are going to be implemented. We are very grateful to all the experts who supported us with this exercise. We have discussed today we heard a lot about 2022, 2023. I would agree that it was a very difficult time, and in Chernivtsi, we have actually received the biggest amount of IDPs. Yes, you had attacks and missile hits in our oblast. We had a different situation, but we had to organize procurements in any time. So then I would like to say that in parallel, in 2022, 2023, we have undergone quite a large assessment from the State Audit Service, and the results were quite in line with what Deloitte has found. There were a lot of discussions on covered governance, and Chernivtsivvodokanal has quite a long story from 2016. We cooperate with KfW, German bank, and with German partners. We have a lot of processes which we already discussed, and when discussing them with Deloitte, we all have already had some experience behind. So I'd like to say that in contrary to other vodokanals, we are now discussing the major amendments with our main donor, KfW Bank, and as to the transparency, openness, we always adhere to this principle. These are one of main principles which are very important for tender procedures requested by the KfW Bank. I'd like to say the following, and again, I would like to express my gratitude to Deloitte company. They supported us in this very harsh time. On one side, we have to be active in terms of operational activities to support the city, to support mobilization, because we all know that all water canals are now in a very difficult position because tariffs are low and also human resources are scarce, and many our staff members had to be mobilized. Therefore, there are a lot of aspects which impact our activity. Therefore, governance might not be the priority when there are much more difficult issues to decide. From our experience, I'd like to mention also the following, that we should think about the future because this initiative is about future. We continue our cooperation with the EU anti-corruption program, and we provide respective reporting, continue our communication with Deloitte regarding specific recommendations, and we know that Mykolaiv as Chernivtsi city will have quite huge public positive effects because of implementation of these recommendations. And greetings to Mykolaiv city. Thank you, Andriy. Now I'd like to ask Yegor Grigorenko, the partner from Deloitte, to close our discussion and to open it then for Q&A sessions. So if should you have any questions, we'll have some time for that. Okay, you have experience in public sector and reforms in public sector. Not all reforms are at the final stage, so it's difficult to talk about specific results and recommendations on how it is possible to understand where we are. When you move in the correct direction, you move flawlessly only forward. And we understand that Vodokanal is expected to do everything at one time, but nevertheless, development is inevitable, and it is necessary to do everything for tomorrow in very complex conditions. What would be your recommendations regarding the options which every side should ensure from the side of the owner, from the management, from the partners, to make this transformation happen quickly and successfully?
Питання.
Thank you for the question. Well, frankly speaking, we work a lot in public sector at the center level, and they have much more work to do. This experience is a little bit different. Let's be frank. In many structural projects related to reforms of whole sectors or legislative blocks which we participate, or in many projects related to specific major public enterprises like Ukrenergoatom, Ukrzaliznytsia, and others in which we cooperated, the main thing is usually lacking. The actual owner is missing. Nominally, the owner is here, the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine, and it is a designated management body. But in fact, in practice, it's always missing. And here, we are very interested in cooperating with communal enterprises, with Kyiv-Vodokanal and Chernivtsivvodokanal, because the owner is present here. From 2014, from my experience and from my observation, I saw that Ukraine has significantly changed in the following. When you go to regions, to communities, communicate in different cities with the representatives of local councils or with the management of communal enterprises, very often you meet people who do care, who do want to make a difference, and who understand that they came for a longer time and it is important for them personally. So now I see that more often. And this is one of the factors why decentralization reform, comparing to all other reforms, became one of the most successful in our country. For me personally, and for our company in general, I have an understanding that at this level, in interacting with local communities, with communal enterprises, we can reach some speedy solutions because the real owner is there. So here I wouldn't suggest anything specific because the owner is here, the owner is interested. I would give maybe one recommendation: no matter how specific faces, positions will change, the owner should continue being interested in changes. And second point, I would say that communication issue is important. The communication between the communal enterprises and the owners at the level of project management is crucially important. Now this interaction is only present within some line processes, but it's sometimes missing at higher level, more systematically. So it's important to think in this direction. So not the only one Vodokanal communicates with the city, but for all communal enterprises, there should be some project office which would communicate and will provide support. There are much more I can say, but at the end, I would like to say the following. It doesn't matter how many critical comments you would find in the report or in our documents, even if we argued a lot with the representatives of the companies. Our team is actually very grateful for this exercise and for this cooperation, because we see that the city feels like the city is the owner of Vodokanal, and they do care about what they do and what do they want to reach. They are interested in the results they'd like to reach. That was an overarching feeling for us during this exercise, and here we saw it. So thank you very much for that.
Дякую дуже. Ми переходимо до питань.
Thank you so much. We're moving to the questions, and we're finalizing the communication as in the networking process. If there are any questions, you can raise your hands. You can even ask in English. You will hear the interpretation. No questions?
По водоканалу попередньо...
I would like to add that as for the water utility, there were two institutions more who provided assessments, independent consultants who provided the assessment of their procurement capacities and provided their results as well, and the Department of Internal Financial Control, Supervision and Countering Corruption, who also found some of the points which need improvement at the enterprise. And soon we were expecting for the results of this work as well to unite all of that and to provide changes. What's important about that? When you tell a lot, mostly you want to hide something. We don't want to hide anything. In the opposite, we would like everything to be understood by everyone, because very often in the chase for short headings on news, you can lose the essence. Mykolaivvodokanal is not the only Vodokanal in Ukraine, moreover in the world. Mykolaivvodokanal has certain issues which still exist in other water utilities and which have already been solved. We would like to take those best practices and to use them in the procurement as well. But in fact, we have problems as all the other water canals because we have the state procurement system which has certain issues as well. I'll take 1 minute of yours. Let me tell you about the example from today. In Mykolaiv, we had one of the companies who was dealing with the repairment of the asphalt roads. We were taking them away from the city for 3 times. Their work was done in a bad way. So there were certain claims about the stones and pebbles and so on. Recently, we decided that the water utility cannot do everything with the high quality on its own. So we need the tender procedure to solve the issue with the potholes in the road. A certain organization should deal with that. We should order that for a whole year. They should take all of that out. They should, in fact, provide the necessary covering for the road, and they should bear responsibility for the quality of the works. So the tender procedure was announced. Today, we opened these proposals. They are considered now, and again, we can see the same company which provided the work with the low quality, and again, the price is the lowest. What do we speak about? That today, we have the imperfect Prozoro system. Because when I became a student in 1999 in Kyiv-Mohyla Academy, it's Mykolaiv part, I found internet for myself and I registered at the system of e-auctions, eBay. And there I noticed that there are people who have personal rating. And I, for instance, if the buyer, in fact, claims 5 stars and at least 100 of purchases, I cannot buy a cell phone with a normal price because I'm not qualified. I need certain purchases, a nice ranking, and only then I can buy a cell phone or anything else. Unfortunately, during so many years, I'm telling for the developers of Prozoro, their ranking system is still not defined. Today, as it used to be before, we have the minimal price with the proper documents, and this is the defining indicator while selecting the winner. I'm sure that if we select this winner, As always, our water canal will have all the same, the potholes in the middle of the road, which is a big issue for our city. So I think that first of all, we'll listen to the changes about the procurement procedures. For me, it's a priority number one, because the procurement leads to the situation, especially bad procurement, that they are the object of interest for everybody, the law enforcement. They create bad reputation for Vodokanal, for the city of Mykolaiv, and for our international cooperation. What's important today that with the help of the European Anti-Corruption Initiative, we would be able to overcome all of that and to make this work systematic. And at the state level, yes, we need, as it seems to me, that we should also involve in the improvement of these changes, though our Ukrainian systems of procurement are the demonstrative ones for other even European countries. I mean, Prozoro system. But as they say, there is always room for improvement. So I thank everyone. If there are any questions among the representatives of the media, please don't be shy, pose them now. Are there any questions? Okay, maybe there will be questions after the end of the event, or there will be information requests. Of course, you'll get a report in Ukrainian, and you will be able to get acquainted with it. And we are always ready to openly comment on that. You can follow our next steps because we'll define the plan of actions with certain assignments and tasks and timelines, responsible persons. You will be able to follow how these improvements are implemented live. Thank you so much that in spite of 2 air raid alarms, you stayed with us and that you discussed and emphasized again that this transparency way is irreversible. And I hope that next time we meet, we will be able to speak more, not about some plans, but about certain outcomes. And the most important thing, how it changed the quality of the provided services and was costing less for the budget of the city, for the good of the city residents. Thank you. This is the end of our online broadcast. Thank you for listening us. I hope that it was interesting for you. If there are any questions in Zoom, no questions, right? Okay, then. And you know all of the emails where you can get all the necessary information. Goodbye, take care, and thank you, the Armed Forces of Ukraine, that we can go on with our work.